All right, Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory due to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS, and Shalom to you brothers that's preaching this truth. I'm Karat the Zabbar, back on another show. In this lesson, I'm going to entitle The 10 Tribes are the Gentiles in the New Testament. All right. So pretty much when you read the New Testament, you have a remnant of the 10 tribes that are scattered, okay, that are scattered amongst those regions. And this is what Christians don't understand. They think that when you read the New Testament that Gentiles are the heathen nations, all right? But when you read the New Testament, the Gentiles are Israelite foreigners, okay? You have Gentiles amongst both the northern and southern kingdom, okay? The house of Judah and the house of Israel. And when you read in the New Testament, it's clear that a lot of those Gentiles is in reference to the 10 tribes, all right? The remnant of the 10 tribes who remain, because we understand that the bulk of the 10 tribes were removed out of the land, okay, during the Assyrian captivity. And the ones of the 10 tribes that were under the Assyrian captivity, they would later leave the Assyrian captivity and come over here to the Americas. All right. But there was a remnant that was left in the land and throughout those regions, scattered throughout those regions, and they are present amongst the Jews in the New Testament. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the scriptures to show proof that, you had a remnant of the 10 tribes that was around, okay? And they would, believe on the Messiah and ultimately the gospel being preached unto them also. So this is 2 Kings chapter 17. We're going to first start with the Most High removing the 10 tribes from out of the land and removing them from the nation of Israel. So let's go right to the point. This is 2 Kings chapter 17. Salakia. Okay, I want to start from I'll start from 14 is good. And this is speaking of the house of Israel, which are the 10 tribes. So it says, nevertheless, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like to the neck of their fathers. They did not believe in the Lord their God, and they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them, and they followed vanity, and became vain, and went after the heathen. And went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. Right. So the house of Israel were always following after the ways of the heathens and worshiping their gods. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worship all the hosts of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah. Right. So this is the bulk of the house of Israel was removed out of the Lord's sight. Okay. Which he removed them out of the land, but ultimately removing them out of his sight, the house of Israel were no longer his people. Okay? They were no longer the nation of Israel, but they would be actual Gentiles and heathens in the eyes of the Lord. All right? And the Lord only dealt with the house of Judah from this point on. Verse 19, also Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord, their power, but walked in the statutes of Israel, which they made. All right, so Judah was wicked too, but the Most High didn't completely cut Judah off. Judah remained the Lord's people. Judah remained a part of the Judah remained as the nation Israel. Okay, so verse 20. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel, these are the 10 tribes, and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. Until he had cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, king, and Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sin of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land. Salakia. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. Right. So the Most High removed the 10 tribes and put them in Assyrian captivity. All right. And during this event, Israel was removed out of the land, and they was cut off from being the nation of Israel. The 10 tribes were cut off from being the nation of Israel. So they were heathens in the eyes of the Lord. Now, when you read on, it mentions how, the Assyrians would bring other nations and place them in that land. Okay. So we know that the land, the regions of the northern tribes, you will have actual heathens in that land. Okay. But though the Most High removed the nation of Israel, the 10 tribes out of the land, there was still a remnant. There was still a remnant around. Okay. And the bulk of the nation of Israel, Slakia, the bulk of the 10 tribes came over to the Americas. When you read that in Second Edges, the 13th chapter. Okay. But from there, let's go to the book of Luke. Let's go to the book of Luke, chapter 1. Salakia, Luke chapter 2. Because, we're going to read about Anna, the prophetess. Because Anna, the prophetess Anna, she was of the 10 tribes. Okay. So let's go to Luke chapter 2, verse. I start from 36. So this is Luke 2 and 36, and it reads, and there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. Right, so you have this woman on the scene, Anna, a prophetess, a woman that the Most High was dealing with. And she was of the tribe of Asher. Okay, now Asher is of the northern kingdom. Asher is one of the 10 tribes. So you here in the New Testament, you have this woman, which was of the 10 tribes that were on the scene. All right, showing you. So this is an example of Anna being an example of the remnant of the 10 tribes that remained in the land, that was scattered amongst the regions, the land of Israel, and those neighboring countries that were all taken over by the Roman Empire. Okay. So it says she was of a great age and lived with an husband 7 years from her virginity. She was, it says, and she was a widow of about 84 years, which is like 84 years old, which departed not from the temple, but served God with fasting and praying night and day. And she coming in that instant gave thanks likewise unto the Lord, and spake of him to all them that look for redemption in Jerusalem. Right. So, and so she believed on the Messiah. She knew that Yahweh Shah, the child Yahweh Shah, to be the Messiah. All right. And this is like a precursor because her being of the 10 tribes and believing, showing you that Yahweh Shah, he would be for the Gentiles, a light into the Gentiles, all right, which is Israel that was in the Gentile state, all right, and the bulk of those 10 tribes who were in the region, those are the Gentiles who were going to believe on Yahweh Shah, as well as amongst Judah, because you had Hellenized Jews who were going to believe on the Lord, the Messiah also, all right? But you had a remnant of the 10 tribes that remained, who are Gentiles that were going to believe on the Messiah also, okay? And Anna is like the precursor to Yahweh Shah being towards those Gentiles. So from there, let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 4. This is Matthew chapter 4. That says Yahweh Shah begins his ministry. I'll start from verse 12. Now when Yahweh Shah had heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the seacoast. And it says, in the borders of Zebulun and Nephthalim. Right, so this is the land of Zebulun and Naphtali. Okay, this is where Yahweh Shah is making his way. Okay, verse 14, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun and the land of Nephthalim, by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. Right, so Galilee was in the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, all right, where Yahweh Shah was making his way. Now it says Galilee of the Gentiles. So those Gentiles are in reference to the remnant of the 10 tribes who remained in that land, all right, that wasn't exiled. Galilee of the Gentiles. This is in reference to those the remnant of the 10 tribes, the remnant of those the nation of Israel who remained. Now, verse 16 it says, verse 14, as it was spoken of Isaiah the prophet. Okay, so this is prophesied. But let's read verse 16. It says, a people which saw Salakia, the people which sat in darkness saw a great light. Right. So these people that sat in darkness, those 10 tribes, those remaining 10 tribes, they were Gentiles. They were in a state of darkness. All right. They saw a great light, which was Yahweh Shah. Yahweh Shah being that light. Now it says, and to them which sat in the regions of the shadow of death, light is sprung up. Yeah, so Yahweh Shah being that light. Now it says, as it says in Isaiah, this is mentioned in Isaiah, the 9th chapter. So we're going to go to Isaiah 9, showing you that those 10 tribes are Israelites. I mean, those Gentiles are Israelites, and mainly of the 10 tribes. This is Isaiah chapter 9. It's Isaiah 9 and 1. Now it says, nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation. When at the first, that dimness, the house of Israel being in darkness, okay? And it says, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Now, how did the Lord do that? The Lord brought the Assyrians in. Okay, we read in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. But the Lord, he afflicted the land of Naphtali and the land of Zebulun through the Assyrian captivity. All right, you can also read that in the previous chapter, chapter 8 goes into it. Let's continue. And afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, and Galilee of the nations. We read Galilee of the Gentiles in Matthew 4. It says Galilee of the nations. So it's like what it's saying is that these nations or these Gentiles were the people that the Lord casted off. All right, which were the 10 tribes. The remaining of the 10 tribes who were in those lands, they were Gentiles. Okay, and it was scattered amongst actual Gentiles. Pursuing the 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, we read how when you read, it speaks about how the king of Assyria, he placed other nations in those lands. All right, but you still had Israelites that remained, which are a part of those nations or are now Gentiles. Why? Because they were in darkness. Now, verse 2, the people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them have the light sprung. Right, so this is prophecy how Yahweh Shah, when you read on, Yahweh Shah, he was going to be that light unto those Gentiles, unto these same people that went into Assyrian captivity. All right. Verse 3, thou hast multiplied the nation and increased the joy before Slakia. It says the joy before thee, according to the joy in harvest. And as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. for the Slakia. It says, for thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the days of Midian. So this is restoration to these same people that were taken to the Assyrian captivity. Yahweh Shah is going to be that light and restoration for them. Now let's read this in the NLT, okay? Showing you who those Gentiles are. We're gonna read this again in the NLT, and that says, nevertheless, verse 1, nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun, the land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between the Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory. Right, so these Galilee of the Gentiles, referencing to Zebulun and Naphtali, who were once destroyed, was going to be restored. So these Gentiles, who are these Gentiles? These Gentiles are Israelites. It's going to further go on. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. For those who live in the land of darkness, a light has shined. Verse 3, you will enlarge the nation of Israel, showing you who these Gentiles are. See, verse 3 says, you will enlarge the nation of Israel, which is in reference to those same Gentiles in verse 1. Galilee of the Gentiles, of the 10 tribes, showing you that those Gentiles are Israelites. All right. So let's go back to Matthew's. Let's go back to the KJV. So we go back to Matthew's 4. So now we know who these Gentiles are. When it says Galilee of the Gentiles, it was in reference to those actual tribes in those regions of Naphtali and Zebulun, which was the northern kingdom destroyed by the Assyrians, and due to the Assyrian captivity and the Most High removing his people out of his sight, those remaining of the northern tribes who remained in those regions, they were Gentiles. Okay, so that's why when you read in Matthew 4, and it referenced Isaiah, the 9th chapter, and it speaks about Galilee of the Gentiles. Those Gentiles were Israelites. Okay, and they were the people in darkness who was going to see the light, which was Yahushua. So now from there, let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 10. The book of Matthew 10, verse 5 and 6. Matthew 10 and 5. These 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not in the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Right, so Yahushua commanded his 12 to go not into the way of the Gentiles, right? Now, we understand that we're not to teach the actual Gentiles, okay? But during that time, the disciples already understood that, all right? They already understood that they were Israelites and that the word is for Israel. These Gentiles that Yahushua is in referencing to are the northern kingdom, all right? The Gentiles of them. So when Yahushua is saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles and enter the cities of the Samaritans, now we understand that actual Gentiles were in the land of Samaria, but you had Gentiles amongst the 10 tribes. So the Lord is saying, don't go to them first, all right? Because ultimately the word wasn't for them at that time, okay? The gospel had to first be preached to the Jews. So let's read this again. So it says, these 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Right. So the Lord is actually in referencing this to the scattered 10 tribes that remain. Okay, they wasn't supposed to get taught first. Verse 6. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right. The lost sheep of the house of Israel. The house of Israel during this time. All right. When you read the Gospels, the house of Israel is in reference to the Jews, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Because at this time, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi makes up the whole house of Israel. So the gospel had to be preached unto the lost house, the lost sheep, which are the Jews who were in darkness. They had to be preached the gospel first, okay? The Gentiles, which were the 10 tribes, it wasn't for them yet. But the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which are the lost amongst the Jews that were in darkness, they had to get the gospel preached into them first. All right? So that's what the Lord meant when he said, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The house of Israel were the Jews. From there, let's go to the book of Ezra, chapter 2. Because we have to prove who is all Israel at this time. And this is Ezra. This is when the Jews were returning from Babylonian exile. All right. So this is Ezra chapter 2. I'm going to read verse 1, and then we're going to jump down to verse 70. There's Ezra 2 and 1. Now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of those which had been carried away, which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon, and came again unto Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city. So these are the Jews returning back into the land. after leaving the Babylonian captivity. Okay, so now let's jump down to verse 70. So the second Ezra chapter 2, verse 70. Now, when you read the chapter, it goes into pretty much the people of the Jews, or Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, who was returning. Okay, and verse 70 it reads, "So the priests and the Levites and some of the people and the singers and the porters and the Nethinims dwelt in their cities, and all Israel in their cities." Right. So at this time, all Israel were the southern kingdom who returned. That's who all Israel is at this point. Why? Because the 10 tribes, they were cut off from being a part of the nation of Israel, and they were Gentiles. Now let's look up this word Israel. We know Yasha Allah. I'm gonna go right to the point, the definition at the bottom where it says the name of the nation after the return from exile. Right. So what is it saying? That the whole nation of Israel, at one, it gives you all these definitions. Israel could be in reference to the man. Israel could be reference to the whole 12 tribes. Israel could be in reference to the northern kingdom, and it lets you know that Israel, the whole nation of Israel, are the ones who returned from Babylonian exile back into the land. Okay, so which was the house of Judah. So what you got to understand is, once the southern kingdom returned from Babylonian exile back into the land, they were the whole house of Israel. Okay, the 10 tribes were no longer a part of the nation of Israel. Only Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So when you read in the Gospels, when you read the New Testament, in the Gospels, the nation of Israel were only the Jews and not the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so when Yahushua said, "Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel," he was in reference to the lost Jews who had to be taught the Messiah. Okay, now we can go back to Matthew 10 and read it again. Matthew 10 and 5. "These 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." The lost sheep. So go to the lost Jews, all right, and preach the gospel unto them, not the Gentiles, which were the Gentile amongst the Israelite foreigners, all right. The Gentiles being the remnants of those 10 tribes who remain, all right. It wasn't for them yet. So from there, let's go to Matthew 15. It speaks about the woman of Canaan. Matthew 15. Okay, the Syrophoenician woman. Okay, Matthew 15:21. Then Yahushua went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Zidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grieved. Salakia, my daughter is Salakia. Well, let me read up. Okay, read it again. Matthew 15:22. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And the disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right. So this was what Yahushua told this woman of Canaan. All right. Now it said, when it says a woman of Canaan, it doesn't mean that she was an actual Canaanite. All right. But she was a citizen of those regions, a Syro-Phoenician woman. All right. Syro, which is Syria, Phoenicia, which is of the land of Canaan. And it says Syro-Phoenician because the Roman Empire made Syria and Phoenicia into one province, all right? Made it into one state. All right, so she was of that region, but not an actual Canaanite. This woman was an Israelite, and she was an Israelite out of one of the 10 tribes. She was of the northern kingdom, and we're going to prove that. But let's read it again. Where we left off. Okay, so this Yahushua told this woman, verse 24, and he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right, so Yahushua told her, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep, all right, or the lost Jews. Okay, the gospel had to be preaching to them first. But this woman, she was an Israelite of the northern kingdom. Now, let's prove that. Now, verse 25. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. Right, so Yahushua said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. The children are the house of Israel, the Jews. All right, the bread being the gospel, believing on the Messiah. That's the children's bread. The Jews had to be taught to the Messiah first. So Yahushua said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. Now, from there, before we read on, let's go to Matthew's chapter 7, verse 6. Because he called this woman a dog, right? But was that a dog of was that an insult that he was saying to her? This is Matthew chapter 7 and 6. Give not that which is holy unto dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. Right, so yeah, give not that which is holy unto dogs, nor your pearls unto swine. All right, what's holy? This truth. This is our pearls and what's holy, given out to dogs or to swine, which is in reference to it could be a reference to actual heathen or like an Israelite who is in a like mindset of a heathen. All right, who's not going to come into this truth. You don't waste your time with them. But let's look up this word dog.
Strong's G 2965. Kuon.
Kuo. A dog metaphor. A man of impure mind, an imputed man. Right. Someone, so pretty much someone who's not going to believe. You don't waste your time with them. All right. An imputed man, impure mind. The scriptures speak about, people part of the church, if they can't take correction and they don't want to heed to the word, it speaks about casting them out as a heathen. All right. So you don't waste your time with certain individuals like Jake in the world who's not going to get this truth. They're like dogs. All right. So, yeah, so Yahushua said, give not that which is holy unto dogs. Now, we know when you read Matthew 15 that the Lord will heal her daughter. But So is Yahushua being a hypocrite? Let's find out. Because he called this woman a dog. And we read in Matthew 7, it says, give not that which is holy unto dogs. Let's see what kind of dog Yahushua called this woman. So we back at Matthew's 15 and 26. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. Now let's look up this word dog. Let's see what kind of dog Yahushua called this woman.
Strong's G 2952. Kunarian. Kunarian.
It says kunanian, a little dog. Right, so we have two different Greek words for dog. So this is not the same dog that Yahushua quoted in Matthew 7 and 6, where it says, give not that which is holy unto dogs. This dog is it says little dog. This dog is a household dog, all right? This is a dog that is of a household. Now let's prove that. The next verse. It says, and she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. See, so this is a household dog. This is like a pet dog. So Yahushua said it's not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs, but this is a dog that is of a household. All right. So she says, truth, Lord, yet the dog eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. So like a child that is sitting at the table and eating, and the crumbs fall on the floor, and the dog come and eat of those crumbs. All right. But this dog is not in reference to like a heathen person, but this is a household dog. All right. So though this woman wasn't of the children, meaning of the Jews, but she was still of the household. Why? Because she had to be of one of the 10 tribes of Israel. Okay. That's why Yahushua referenced her into a household dog and not as a dog as a heathen or actual heathen person. Okay? Because a household dog still has care from the owner. Just like how a child would have care, the owner of the household would have care over the child and his pet. Okay? So let's read it again. Let's read it again and put more context to it. So I can just bear with me. Right, so it says, verse 26 again. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Right, and the master is the Most High. All right, the children are in reference to the Jews, which are the children. And this dog, which is someone of the 10 tribes, because they are still of the household. Okay, they're still of the household, though they are not a part of the nation of Israel. They still have a care over them from the Most High. All right, so this woman had to be of the northern kingdom, because the Lord did not reference her to a dog as in a heathen person, but this dog was a little dog, a household dog. All right, showing you that she was still of the household. Ultimately, of the household, which it's like how can I word it? Because the 10 tribes, they were going to be brought back into the household of Israel. Okay. So from there, let's go to Romans chapter 9. This is Romans chapter 9, verse 24. Romans 9, verse 24. because we know because the word, the word was first delivered unto the Jews, and then eventually it would be taught to the Gentiles. All right, which you had the Hellenized Jews. You had the what? The remaining 10 tribes that were on the scene. So when the gospel was given to Paul to teach the Gentiles, that was pretty much for the whole nation of Israel at that time. Okay, you had the Hellenized Jews, and then you had the remnant of the remnant of the northern kingdoms, because some of them were Hellenized too. You had Hellenized of the remnant of the northern kingdom that was in those regions. All right. So when Yahushua raised up Paul pretty much to teach the Gentiles, that covers the whole 12 tribes of Israel. Now this is Romans chapter 9 verse 24. It says, even us whom he have called, not of the Jews. It says not of the Jews only, but also the Gentiles. Right, so Jew and Gentile. The Jew and Gentile here is in reference to the Jews, the southern kingdom, and the Gentiles, the northern kingdom, which makes up one nation. Now it says, as he saith also in OC. Now this is in reference to Hosea, the first chapter. I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Right. So who in Hosea, the first chapter, did the Most High call not my people and not my beloved? The 10 tribes. Okay. So when it says Jew and Gentile, is in reference to the house of Judah, and the Gentiles, the house of Israel, the northern kingdom. Let's prove that. Let's go to Hosea 1. Go right to the point. Hosea 1. Hosea 1-6. And this is Hosea having children from the harlot, and these children was going to be a representation of the Most High cutting off the 10 tribes. So it says, and she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her name Leruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. And that's what the Most High did through the Assyrians. He removed the house of Israel out of his sight and cut them off from being a nation. Verse 7. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah and will save them. Yeah, so the Most High, he will have mercy on the house of Judah. And Judah remained his people. Okay, so when you read in the Gospels, that's who was on the scene, who was still the Most High's people, the Jews, or the house of Judah. And I will save them, by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. And, historically, the Most High saved Judah from the Assyrians. He allowed the Assyrians to take the house of Israel, but he didn't allow the Assyrians to take the house of Judah. And the Most High sent the angel to slaughter 185,000 Assyrians. Okay. Verse 8. Now when she had weaned Leruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. And God called his name Lo-Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. We read that in Romans. I will call them my people, which were not my people. Okay? Who was that in reference to? He said, Romans 9, the Jew and Gentiles. The Gentiles were reference to Hosea, the first chapter. I will call them my people, which are not my people. So we read in Hosea Who is the ones called not my people? This is in reference to the northern kingdom. All right. Verse 9 again, it says, and then said God, call his name, Lord me, for ye are not my people. So this child name means not my people. All right. And I would not be a God. So this was said unto who? The house of Israel, the 10 tribes. Verse 10, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power. Right, so these 10 tribes, or the house of Israel, were going to be brought back. They were going to be gathered back unto the nation of Israel. Okay? Verse 11, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together. Right, the house of Judah and the house of Israel, the Jews and the Gentiles that we read in 9 and 24. Okay? Hosea 1 and 11 again. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Right. So this is the house of Judah and the house of Israel being brought back into one fold, one nation. All right. Romans 9 and 24, the Jew and the Gentiles, Judah and Israel. Now from there, let's get one more scripture, James 1 and 1. This is James 1 and 1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Yahushua HaMashiach. It says, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. Right. So James is, look, he's letting you know, to the 12, these letters are to the 12 tribes which are gathered abroad. Okay. Now, was any epistles or letters written to the bulk of the 10 tribes that were over here to the Americas? No. The 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, meaning of those at that time, the remnant of the northern kingdom who was scattered throughout those regions and were Hellenized also with the Jews. Okay? So these epistles, when you read those epistles and those letters Paul's writing, a lot of those Gentiles were of the southern kingdom. You had Hellenized Jews, and then you had Gentiles of the 10 tribes who were considered heathens. All right? But they were still of the house of Israel who had to be brought back into the fold. Okay? And this is why it says James 1 and 1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Yahushua Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. Right. So now this gospel is for who? The whole 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And this is showing you that, look, you had a remnant of the 10 tribes, though the bulk of the northern kingdom were over here in the Americans, you still had a remnant of the northern kingdom that were in the land and scattered throughout those lands of the nations that Rome occupied. Okay? And this is why James is writing into those 12 tribes. So, with that, hope you brothers learned something. I want to say all praises, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS, and shalom to the elect.